The shadows before the storm night had fallen over Germany, and the streets of Munich echoed with whispers of unrest. The Great War was over, but peace had left behind a ghost. In the dark corners of taverns and in the homes of veterans, one name stirred like a flicker in dry grass: Adolf Hitler. Once a failed artist, now a firebrand speaker, he fed on the wounds of a broken nation. Germany had lost more than a war. It had lost pride, purpose, and power. And that loss needed a voice. The Treaty of Versailles had humiliated Germany. The economy had collapsed. Families starved, jobs vanished, and bitterness filled the air. But Hitler offered something that cut through the despair: certainty. He blamed Jews, communists, and the traitors who signed the treaty. He promised revenge, order, and glory. His words weren't just speeches. They were sparks falling into gasoline. The German people were desperate, and desperation listens. Hitler joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party, and turned it into his stage. With every rally, every march, he drew more to his cause. The Nazi symbol, the swastika, became not just a sign of identity, but a promise. Germany will rise again. In 1923, Hitler made his first move: the Beer Hall Putsch, a failed coup attempt in Munich. He was arrested, but prison didn't silence him. Instead, it gave him time to write Mein Kampf, his manifesto. It was a blueprint for a new world, one where Germany ruled and inferior races were crushed beneath its boots. When he walked free, he found a different Germany. The economy had improved, but Hitler waited, biding his time. The world wasn't watching him yet, but soon it would be. As the 1930s began, the Great Depression struck. It hit Germany hard. The pain returned, and so did the desperation. This time, Hitler was ready. He promised jobs, food, dignity. He offered enemies to blame and a future to believe in. The people listened. By 1933, Hitler was Chancellor of Germany. Within months, he became its dictator. Democracy was dismantled. Political enemies were jailed or killed. And the world? It looked away. In the shadows of Europe, a new storm was gathering. And at its center stood a man whose voice could rally millions and destroy nations. The rise of the Reich. The fire began with a building. The Reichstag, Germany's parliament, was set ablaze in February 1933. Hitler blamed communists and used the chaos to seize emergency powers. What came next was swift and brutal: the Enabling Act. It gave Hitler absolute control. Overnight, democracy died and dictatorship was born. He banned rival parties. Trade unions were destroyed. The press became a tool of propaganda. Through fear, lies, and spectacle, he reshaped Germany. The people didn't just follow him, they worshipped him. He was no longer a man. He was the Führer. The Nazis moved quickly. They targeted Jews, labeling them enemies of the state. Laws were passed stripping them of rights. Book burnings swept across cities. History was rewritten. Truth became what Hitler said it was. Children were trained in Nazi ideology. Schools became breeding grounds for hate. The Hitler Youth marched through towns, proud and blind. The message was clear: loyalty to the Führer above all. Germany's military, once shattered by Versailles, was secretly rebuilt. Hitler rearmed the nation in defiance of international law. Factories roared back to life, but not for peace. They forged bullets, tanks, and steel. In 1935, the Nuremberg laws institutionalized racial hatred. Jews were no longer citizens. Intermarriage was banned. The world watched, but did little. Hitler had tested the waters and found them still. He marched into the Rhineland in 1936, another forbidden move. Again, no one stopped him. Each unchecked step made him bolder. His speeches grew more fiery, his enemies more endangered, and his vision more terrifying. By the end of the decade, the Nazi regime was not just a political machine. It was a cult, a nation transformed into an army, and its leader, obsessed with conquest, turned his gaze outward. The first moves on the chessboard, Austria fell without a fight. In 1938, German troops marched into Vienna to cheers and flowers. The Anschluss was bloodless, but it marked the first real expansion of Hitler's empire. He claimed it was unity. But unity under the gun is conquest. Next, Hitler looked at Czechoslovakia. The Sudetenland, a region with many ethnic Germans, became his excuse. He demanded it. The world held its breath. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain flew to meet him. They talked, they smiled, and Hitler got what he wanted. It was called appeasement. Chamberlain returned to Britain waving a paper, claiming peace. But Hitler laughed. He had no interest in peace, only in power. Months later, he took the rest of Czechoslovakia. No excuse this time, just force. And again, the world did nothing. The League of Nations was powerless. The warnings had been loud, but no one acted. Behind the scenes, Hitler made a secret deal with Stalin. The Nazi-Soviet pact shocked the world. Two enemies agreeing not to attack each other. But it was more than that. It was a plan to divide Poland. And on September 1st, 1939, the tanks rolled. German troops invaded Poland from the west. Soviet forces came from the east. Within weeks, the country was crushed. This time, the world responded. Britain and France declared war. World War II had begun. But Hitler had planned for this. He had built a war machine. He had silenced dissent. He had molded a nation ready to kill and die for his dream. And the dream was far from over. Blitzkrieg and the Fall of Nations Poland was the first victim of Hitler's lightning war, Blitzkrieg. It wasn't just about strength. It was about speed, surprise, and shock. Planes bombed cities. Tanks crushed defenses. Soldiers moved like a tide. Within weeks, Poland fell. The world watched, stunned, and Hitler smiled. The strategy had worked. He had gambled, and he had won. But he wasn't finished. In April 1940, he struck again. Denmark and Norway fell quickly. Then came Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. One by one, the dominoes toppled. France, proud and powerful, collapsed in just 6 weeks. Hitler marched into Paris. The Eiffel Tower stood tall, but the French spirit was broken. Britain stood alone. Hitler launched the Battle of Britain. He bombed London night after night. He thought the British would surrender, but they didn't. Churchill rallied his people. The RAF fought back. Hitler faced his first failure. He couldn't break Britain. But the war was far from over. Behind the front lines, the horror deepened. The SS hunted Jews, political enemies, and anyone who defied the Nazi order. Ghettos were formed. Executions became routine. But in Hitler's mind, there was still one more move. One more gamble that could bring him everything. And that gamble was Russia. The Russian gamble in June 1941. Hitler broke his pact with Stalin and invaded the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa began with thunder. 3 million German soldiers surged east. Cities fell. Villages burned. The Red Army was caught off guard. At first, it seemed Hitler would win again. Kiev fell. Smolensk fell. The Nazis pushed deeper, dreaming of Moscow. But Russia was vast. Its winters deadly. And Stalin was not defeated. As snow fell, the German army stalled. Supplies froze. Morale shattered. Soviet reinforcements struck back. For the first time, the Nazi war machine bled heavily. Hitler refused to retreat. He ordered his men to hold. Thousands died. Entire divisions vanished into the cold. Leningrad was surrounded. Civilians starved. But they did not surrender. Stalin called it the Great Patriotic War, and he would fight it with fire. As Hitler stretched his forces thin, resistance grew. In the forests, partisans sabotaged trains. In cities, spies fed secrets to the Allies. Hitler had opened a second front, and in doing so, he had awakened a giant. The Holocaust unveiled behind the front lines. Something darker unfolded. It began with bullets. Mass shootings of Jews in Ukraine, Belarus, and beyond. Einsatzgruppen followed the army, killing by the thousands. But bullets weren't enough. Hitler wanted a final solution. Concentration camps became death camps. Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor. Names etched in blood. Jews were deported from across Europe. Trains crammed with the old, the young, the sick. Few survived the journey. Fewer survived the camps. Gas chambers replaced firing squads. Bodies were burned in pits and ovens. The industrialization of murder had begun. 6 million Jews died, along with Romani people, disabled individuals, and others deemed unworthy. The world would not learn the full horror until later. But whispers escaped. The Ellis knew something. Yet, the war took priority. Hitler called it purification. But history would call it genocide. And it was far from over. Turning of the tide, Stalingrad, a city on the edge of the Volga River, once ordinary, now legendary. In 1942, Hitler set his eyes on it, not just for strategic reasons, but for its name. To defeat Stalin in his namesake city would be the ultimate humiliation. He sent the Sixth Army, confident in their strength. But the battle that followed would mark a turning point. The city became a graveyard of bricks and blood. Every building was a fortress, every street a battlefield. German tanks found no open ground. Soviet snipers lurked in shadows. Hand-to-hand combat raged in factories and basements. It was not just a clash of armies, it was a war of wills. Winter came. The Germans stretched thin, froze in their foxholes. Supplies dwindled. Stalin unleashed a surprise counteroffensive. Soviet forces encircled the Sixth Army. Hitler ordered them to hold. Surrender was forbidden, but survival was impossible. By February 1943, the German Sixth Army was shattered. Over 300,000 troops had entered Stalingrad. Fewer than 100,000 surrendered. Only a fraction would ever return home. For the first time, the Nazi war machine was in reverse. The myth of Hitler's invincibility was broken. Across Europe, resistance movements gained strength. The Allies sensed a shift. In North Africa, Rommel, the desert fox, was defeated. The Mediterranean opened. The tide was turning. Meanwhile, the skies over Germany darkened. Allied bombers hammered cities. Dresden, Hamburg, Berlin reduced to rubble. Civilians huddled in shelters as firestorms raged above. The war was coming home. In Italy, Mussolini fell. Hitler rushed to rescue his ally, installing him as a puppet. But the message was clear. Fascism was crumbling, and the Allied forces were marching closer. Behind closed doors, Hitler raged. His plans were failing, his enemies multiplying. But he would not yield. The war would not end in compromise. It would end in fire. The invasion from the West, June 6, 1944. D-Day. Operation Overlord. At dawn, Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Thousands of ships, tens of thousands of men, a wall of steel and determination. The beaches, Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword, became killing fields. Machine guns ripped through the surf. Mines exploded beneath landing craft. Yet, wave after wave they came, pushing forward, dying forward, winning inch by inch. By nightfall, the Allies had a foothold. Hitler had been caught off guard. He had believed the attack would come at Calais. His reinforcements were delayed, his grip slipping. From the beaches, the Allies pushed inland. France ignited. Resistance fighters rose. Rail lines were sabotaged. German supply chains choked. Paris was liberated by August. Crowds cheered. Flags waved. The Nazi hold was breaking. To the east, the Soviets surged forward. Operation Bagration obliterated the German lines in Belarus. Hitler's armies were being squeezed. The Third Reich was shrinking. Desperation took root in Berlin. Hitler ordered new weapons, new counterattacks. The V-2 rockets rained terror on London. But they could not turn the tide. The Allies crossed the Rhine. Germany itself was invaded. Cities fell one by one. The Reich was bleeding, and its heartbeat slowing. Yet even as defeat loomed, Hitler clung to delusion. He believed in miracle weapons, in last-minute salvation. But salvation would never come. The fall of the Führer Berlin, 1945. A city in ruins. Soviet tanks circled like vultures. Streets littered with rubble and corpses. The once mighty capital, now a graveyard of ambition. In a bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, Hitler lived in denial. Maps on the walls. Empty promises on his lips. His generals knew it was over, but no one dared say it aloud. The Allies had agreed. Unconditional surrender. Hitler would not allow it. He saw betrayal in every glance. Executions followed. Trust eroded. Madness deepened. On April 30th, 1945, as Soviet forces closed in, Hitler married Eva Braun. A final act of defiance or despair. Hours later, they were both dead. Suicide, poison, and pistol. Their bodies were burned in the garden above, doused in gasoline. The man who once commanded millions now reduced to ashes. Germany surrendered days later. On May 7, 1945, the war in Europe ended. Victory Day. Crowds wept with relief. The nightmare had ended, but the scars remained. Entire cities erased. Millions dead. A continent broken. The Nazi dream had become a global horror. Its architect, now dust. The reckoning and the legacy, the war had ended, but justice was only beginning. In Nuremberg, the surviving Nazi leaders faced trial. Crimes against humanity, genocide, aggression. The world demanded answers. Some confessed, others denied, but the evidence was undeniable. Films of camps, testimonies of survivors, mountains of documents. The Holocaust laid bare. 12 were sentenced to death, others imprisoned. For the victims, it was not enough, but it was a beginning. Germany was divided. East under Soviet control, West under the Allies. A Cold War soon replaced the hot one. But the lessons of World War II lingered. The United Nations was born, a new hope for peace. Nations vowed, never again. But history, cruel and cyclical, never guarantees its promises. For the world, Hitler remains a symbol of evil, of power unchecked, of silence too long maintained. His rise was not magic. It was built on fear, lies, and complicity, and it serves as a warning. Today, his story is told not to glorify, but to remember, to understand the path to ruin, and to guard against its return. Because the storm may pass, but the sky never forgets. The ghosts of war as the smoke cleared over Europe. The full weight of devastation became visible. Cities had become skeletons of stone and ash. Families were shattered. Displaced persons wandered through wreckage with nowhere to go. Europe was a graveyard, not just of the dead, but of innocence. The Holocaust's horrors were unveiled. Liberation forces entered camps and found hell on earth. Emaciated survivors, piles of bodies, rooms full of shoes, glasses, hair, evidence of industrialized death. Photographs captured the images, but no camera could record the stench of evil. The world recoiled. How could this happen? How could an entire nation follow a man into madness? Questions echoed in the empty halls of broken buildings, and guilt hung in the air, thicker than dust. Germany itself was stunned. Many had believed the propaganda. Others had chosen not to see. Now they could not look away. The swastikas were torn down. The monuments of war defaced. But the shame could not be erased. Allied occupation began. Germany was disarmed, dismantled, divided. Trials punished the leaders, but many who served the regime slipped into new roles quietly. The line between justice and mercy blurred. In the East, the Soviet Union took control of Berlin and Eastern Europe. Stalin's grip tightened. A new kind of oppression spread, less genocidal, but equally ruthless. The war had ended, but the world was far from peace. In the West, the United States emerged as a superpower. But even as they rebuilt Europe through the Marshall Plan, they prepared for a new kind of war. Against communism. Against shadows. Hitler was gone. But the echoes of his reign lingered. In the ashes of buildings. In the nightmares of survivors. In the silence between generations who could never explain what they had seen. Hitler's legacy and the lessons ignored. The name Hitler became a symbol, a universal shorthand for tyranny. Schools taught his crimes. Films portrayed his evil. Books dissected his psychology. But the danger of turning him into a monster was that people forgot. He had once been human. He had been elected. He had used laws, not just weapons. He had spoken promises, not just threats. And millions had believed him. It became easier to say it could never happen again. But history whispered otherwise. Genocides in Rwanda, Bosnia, Cambodia followed. The seeds of hate sprouted in new soil. Neo-Nazi groups emerged, small but loud. Holocaust denial crept online. Conspiracy theories echoed the lies of old. The swastika returned, not as history, but as defiance. The past refused to stay buried. Survivors aged. Their numbers dwindled. The first-hand witnesses to horror were dying. And with them, a living memory of what hate could do. Governments built museums. Memorials rose in Auschwitz, in Berlin, in Washington. Names carved in stone. But stone cannot argue. And silence can be dangerous. The world today still wrestles with the lessons of Hitler's war. Nationalism rises. Division deepens. Leaders play with truth like a weapon. And fear, always waiting, finds new voices. If Hitler left one true legacy, it is this: never underestimate what one man, empowered by fear and unchecked by courage, can do. And never forget that it was not just his war. It was a war made possible by millions of silent hands. The eternal vigil. Decades have passed since World War II ended, yet its shadows remain. Veterans carry memories like scars. Memorial bells toll each year, echoing loss through generations. The world changed, but trauma lingers. In Israel, the Holocaust became part of a national identity. Never again is not just a phrase, it is a vow. In Germany, a new generation faced a heavy inheritance. They built a culture of remembrance, not denial. Each year, ceremonies mark liberation days and anniversaries of atrocities. Leaders lay wreaths. Survivors light candles. But time moves on, and attention fades. The danger lies not in forgetting, but in growing numb. Populism has risen once again. Borders tighten. Hate speech grows louder. The internet spreads lies faster than any leaflet from the 1930s. Technology may change, but human nature rarely does. And so, the vigil must be eternal. Teachers, artists, historians, keepers of truth bear a quiet burden. They must tell the stories again and again, even when no one wants to hear. Because every generation must be taught to recognize the signs. the slow erosion of truth, the demonization of others, the seduction of power. We study Hitler not to obsess over the past, but to protect the future, to understand how a world can burn while its people sleep, and to make sure that, in our time, the storm is never allowed to rise again.